Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to the December 29th meeting of the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. Happy holidays to everyone, and thank you for joining us in between Christmas and New Year's. I'm sure, in terms of an update, first I would like to look to our co-executive directors, Karen and Doug, for an update on our funding situation.
Well, we do have an update. A mechanism has been identified for funding, and we are in contact with our contact at the Department of State to iron out all the details.
Doug, do you have anything you want to
add? No, I would just say that that's right. We've talked to Department of State, and we have reached out to Division of Budget to talk about additional funding as well. And we have not heard back from them yet.
Okay, well, that's fantastic news. Thank you both again for your help on this, and thank you again to members of the public who have weighed in on this issue. Are there any questions from the full commission on this for our co-executive directors?
Are there any details as far as what this mechanism is?
Doug?
Sure, I can certainly weigh in. It looks like the Department of State it has found where we will be housed, and they're going to be sending over a contract for the commission's creation and the appropriation to go that way. And it looks like it was identified as the SUNY Research Foundation.
So essentially something that they could have done 8 months ago, or
correct,
any day since April to make funding available. Certainly back in September when we sent the letter, and certainly a couple of weeks ago when we sent the second letter. So I'm happy for the funding. I think we should all be happy for the funding. I'm just really disappointed that we are now literally days from the end of 2020, and we're only getting funded now, which means we're not really starting until January. So great, but very strange that they found a mechanism. I think we deserve an explanation as to why it took as long as it did.
I have a question. So we will no longer be dealing with the New York State Department of State, and our budget process is going through SUNY RF. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what we were told, and we'll have more details soon.
Yeah, we're expecting a contract, which we have not seen yet, and I can't answer that we won't be going through Department of State for. I don't know the answer to that right now.
Well, may I make a suggestion for any of us who have relationships with the university research community? I'm sure that the contract that would be proposed for our operations would be similar to other contracts that are held and administered by the Research Foundation. This would not be the first one, which is one of the reasons why the delay here is as irritating as it is. But we ought to be able to proceed to find a boilerplate. And as we begin to talk about legal advice for employees, making sure that it has the components in it that protect the interest of our employees, as well as our ability to make decisions and have them executed expeditiously. What do you think?
I tend to agree with that. Being a CUNY professor, I do, our college and several deal with CUNY Research Foundation. So there is sort of a boilerplate out there, and I guess they're customizing it, but we might want to be a little proactive on that if we get a hold of a boilerplate or an existing contract rather than wait for somebody else to script us. I think as a commission, we have a good sense, we've met several times now, the directions and the expeditious manner in which we want to move. So I would agree, Commissioner Frazier, that might be a good interim step, unless they indicate this contract they're forwarding to us is imminent, it's on its way. we don't want to be sitting around another month or two. Where's the contract? Where's the contract? We've got to put pedal to the metal. Is that it? Yeah.
While hope springs eternal, I have a question for the executive directors, which is, what does this mean in terms of the timeline to actually have funds available? I hear now a mechanism has been found somewhere in the ether. Now, part of that mechanism is a newly introduced entity, and there is an unspecified contract. So taking all that into account, has there been any indication when that actually means this commission will have the money to function?
No.
So I would assume that the SUNY Research Foundation would act as an entity that houses our funds, and then we would have to, do purchases through them, get reimbursements through them, et cetera. And then you guys, our co-executive directors, would have your salaries paid through them.
It seems that salaries would be, I wouldn't, until we see a contract, I wouldn't say that the procurement and things of that nature is going to go through them. That's very fluid at this point until we see the operation.
Okay.
Well, I can volunteer. If not surprised, I don't live far from the official offices of the Research Foundation. Doug, are you nearby?
Yes.
Do you want to go down and see?
Uh,
We can cut to the chase.
yeah,
Find out how they operate, and let's just go get it.
we can certainly do that. My understanding was we were going to see a contract either today or tomorrow. Karen,
okay.
unless you thought that was different. Obviously, we would have to go over who signs the contract, whether the contract is sufficient. So, Karen, I don't know if that's how you understood that, but my understanding was it was going to be today or tomorrow.
I don't think it'll be today,
Okay.
maybe tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, the offer stands. Resolution is a 5-minute ride and a 15-minute walk away.
Yep.
Okay, so if my colleagues trust me enough to allow me to be dispatched to resolve some of these things, who laughed? Then I'd be more than. See, that's an insider's laugh. Look at that face. Okay, I'd be more than happy to go downtown and
Commissioner
see
Frazier,
what we've got to do.
Commissioner Fraser, the only thing that I would think that I don't know that we can go knock on their door if a contract's not executed under SUNY Research. So we can certainly have a conversation.
Okay,
So the contract is going to come from the Department of Budget?
Department of State.
Department of State. Yeah.
State.
Yes.
Okay.
Or is the contract coming from SUNY RF?
Don't know.
Okay.
That's
We'll
where
wait
it's
for the paper to show up.
right. So I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think it's not clear where the contract's coming from. We were just told this maybe 45 minutes ago.
Wherever it comes from. Fingers crossed.
Right.
And hopefully it says what we expect it's going to say, and the money's available immediately. So until it is, though, we should continue to put pressure on whomever we can.
And
I believe that these questions that we're asking are expected questions that we should have answers to, right? If they're able to give us an answer that we're getting a contract, then we should be able to have some of these details of that we can have a better understanding of how we're going to have access to the funds and be able to use them. But I guess we'll continue to wait for details.
Karen and I did ask some of these questions and they were not answered. And we certainly can go back to our contact and try to get some more answers. Like I said, we just found this out about 45 minutes ago.
Of course, these are things that are out of your hands and are out of our hands. And we thank you so much for doing all of this work and being in contact with the central government and being this go-between for us, especially during the holidays.
Any other questions from the commission for the co-executive directors on this issue?
Current budget
Any?
year.
Yep, go ahead,
right?
John.
No, I'm just saying, we just discussed accessing funds for the remainder of the current budget year. Clarification, that's where we are, right?
Yes.
Any updates regarding next year's budget, which we're also behind the curve on as far as that process is concerned as well?
Aaron, do you want to talk about some of the stuff we've identified?
Well, we put together a preliminary budget and staffing plan, and it looks like we're going to be at around 3.9 million.
Okay.
So let me just jump in here. My understanding of that is it would be dependent on the nature of our relationship with our sponsoring organization. That 3.9 assumes involvement with the state in terms of purchasing IT, et cetera, and other support services. So that until we get our contract, we really don't know. It would be more 3.9 plus whatever services that were contemplated in calculating that budget, plus the cost of those.
Correct.
Commissioner Nesbitt, given, I think, the agreement on that principle, which is it's $3.9 million assuming, and if the assumption is wrong, then it's 3.9 million plus. On that basis, I certainly would want to propose and confirm that the executive director should be engaging with the Division of Budget around the executive budget request or proposal that's going to be coming out in January. I mean, do people think that is appropriate or have any disagreement with that?
I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. However, there's clear constitutional power for them to do that on their own. But I think it's always good to show support for within the organization for them pursuing their duties.
And I agree.
Commissioner Winter, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Wofford.
No, I was just saying, I agree that such a statement of sentiment by the commission is helpful, but not legally necessary. Agreed.
Right, and I agree with that as well. Commissioner Frazier, Commissioner Winter, as you know, having been involved in this process before, is there anything else that you think necessary besides us, are accepting, this number and then urging our co-executive directors to push this accordingly?
Well, I think the 3.9 million that we're talking about, based upon the preliminary budgets that we've been discussing, would also be 3.9 million for one full year. So it's 3.9 million from whenever we get started here, plus the amount that we need to expend between now and April 1. And then as far as other things that we should be doing, obviously we need to be engaged as closely as we can with the division of the budget right now to get into the executive budget. The statute's clear. The statute says the state budget shall include the necessary appropriations for the expenditures of the commission, including compensation for staff and members and all the related expenses. So it's not the legislative budget, it's the state budget. And the state budget is the governor's budget. So the governor really does have the responsibility to provide for an appropriation for the 21-22 fiscal year within his executive proposal. So I'd hope that we can make sure that we're moving promptly to engage with the division of the budget to have us be included in that for the amount of money that we need. And is it
Thank you,
statutorily?
Commissioner Meyer. Yeah.
Certainly agree with that.
Commissioner Frazier, is there anything else you wanted to add, given your expertise in this area?
I would only add a recommendation that, and this is not going to be a surprise to a couple of my colleagues. I think that there is an opportunity in working with the State University Research Foundation that does not exist in a traditional state agency, and that we should avail ourselves of that opportunity. And I'll give you an example. The Research Foundation works with technologies all the time, sun up, sun down. They buy them, lease them, use them, blah, blah, all the time. Some of the things that are important to our public engagement are technologies that the university uses. Some of the analytical technologies that are important to our work or could be helpful to our work are technologies that the university uses. So in some respects, I think this is a good thing. There are other concerns, however, and what I would like to have us do is request from the Research Foundation a briefing for you on everything that they do. Their role statutorily is facilitative of the role of research, inquiry, et cetera, and budget. That's what their job is. So it seems reasonable to me that we reach out to them and say, we want a briefing. We can Zoom a briefing. Nobody's got to travel. Who are you people? Because most of you have no idea who they are. How can you help us move forward? Because there is something that is more easily done in a research foundation setting than is done through the traditional budget setting. I'd like to think that was one of the reasons why this decision was made. I'd like to think that. I wish that it had been made sooner. But at the end of the day, that's what I would recommend we do. Pick up the phone, call them, and say, we'd like a briefing on how you work. And how does your presence in this task help us move forward with this task? I think I have some specific asks of them, but at the end of the day, I know how to get my asks answered because I work with university professors on other things all the time. You need to understand what they do and how they do it and why they exist in the first place. So I think we should, when this meeting is over, approach the leadership of the Research Foundation and say, talk to us about who you are, what you do, and why somebody thought this was a good idea. And how can we facilitate something that has been slowed down by these process problems? And how can you help us move forward? That's what I would do.
I have one practical observation. SUNY has, I believe, about 60 campuses across the state. And one way they could be very helpful is to provide some of those sites for these 12 mandatory and possibly additional mandated and additional public hearings, outreach sessions that we're going to want to do around the state. They have the infrastructure to facilitate that. When I worked for the Senate, they played a role in providing those locations for public hearings, public access.
And also, thank you, Commissioner Flateau. I was reminded when you started talking that we've been working, interestingly enough, with the university since we started working on the census, because the census and the Research Foundation was a partner in the census process from the beginning. So this is, in some ways, a logical next step for them and a continuation of work that they began to facilitate 3 years ago. So I can see all of the reasons why we might hold our breath and go, oh, wow, what is this all about? But I can also see opportunities here, and I think we have to go get them.
I agree. And, you know, I think you all know by now that I'm an eternal optimist. And I fully expect that that contract's going to show up today or tomorrow, and that it'll say exactly what we want it to say. And it will make the funds available immediately. And we'll get to work immediately, putting our budget together and hiring our staff, and we'll hit the ground running. I think that's what we hope and expect. And then we can go and reach out to SUNY, and we can make all of these arrangements. But until we get the contract and until we actually have terms by which our funding is going to be released, and until we have a commitment that the funding is going to be there for 21 and 22, I think we should focus on that. And then obviously from there, we can take whatever steps we need to. You know, there are a couple of ways that we can be held up. We already saw one of them, which is, you know, 8 months of delay in releasing funding. And, you know, miraculously on one of the last days of the year, we have a mechanism that is going to make that funding available. The other way is to underfund us for the following year and not give us the resources we need going forward. I'm concerned about that. So we need a commitment from DOB and from the governor to make sure that our, you know, $3.9 million is going to be in place for 21, 22, and we need to make sure that this funding's available immediately. And then, of course, we can all talk about the 12 meetings or further meetings beyond that. We can talk about a website and how we're going to put that website together and what it should look like and how we should do that outreach. But I think the priority has to be, and we should continue to focus on funding. Where is it? When is it available? How do we pay our executive directors? How do we assemble our staff? How do we put our resources together? Because that has to be the focus for us until the funding's in place. Once it's in place, we can talk about all of these other things and all these great opportunities that we have to work with research institutes and the like. But until that's in place, I think, you know, we should focus on the funding and then obviously schedule another meeting once the funding's in place. We can deal with these other issues as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Martins. Anything else that we would like to discuss concerning Karen and Doug going forward with our request? Well,
Actually,
Karen and Doug, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I think that website is a priority also, because right now, even though we've been meeting for a number of months now, the public has no way of connecting to us, getting information from us other than downloading these meetings. And to me, that should be right up there, because we need a communications link with our broader public that we're responsible to at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah, and I agree, Commissioner Flateau. Though, unfortunately, in the absence of funding, right, I think only we can only.
I agree
yeah,
with Commissioner
right.
Martins there, right?
Yeah, I think we can only prepare a website and you know, and do what we can to accelerate making a website live. But yes, I agree. Well, Commissioners, anything else we would like to discuss for Karen and Doug regarding this their request? Well, Karen and Doug, good luck and Godspeed. Any other issues before we schedule our next meeting that we would like to discuss?
Just want to wish everyone a happy new year. Say goodbye to 2020 and good.
Good riddance.
Yes, good riddance. Well,
let's,
here's to meeting in person one day, right, Commissioners?
Right.
So in terms of scheduling our next meeting, I mean, I agree that it does not necessarily make sense to meet again unless we have funding. But so I think that affects
For that
our
contract
list.
in hand, so that we're reviewing and helping.
Right. I would propose a week from today if we have that contract in hand. What is everyone's availability? We could do 2 o'clock again a week from today.
On the
That's
5th.
Yeah,
That's the
January the 5th.
That's good for me.
Okay,
Okay. 2 o'clock on the 5th?
No objection.
No objection. Commissioner Brady, Frazier, Nesbitt,
We're good.
We're good.
you're good. Okay. Karen, Doug. Okay. All right. No objection to 2 o'clock on the 5th. All right. So we will have our next meeting on January 5th at 2 p.m. Any other business that the commission would like to discuss? All right. Well, thank you all so much. Happy New Year.
Happy
Here's
New
to meeting
Year.
in person. And
Happy
Karen
New
and
Year.
Doug, let us know
Happy New
once, hopefully, fingers crossed, you can get back to us shortly.
Happy New Year.
Okay, thank
Happy
you.
New
Thank
Year.
you all.
Thank you all.
Happy New
There you
Year.
are.
Thank you.